Let's move on now to the Miami Dolphins in our 2023 free agency final offseason review. But before we do that, if you have not already, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and ring the bell to get notified when Ryan and I create new content. This is the last of series when it comes to free agency specific additions or departures for the Miami Dolphins, which means that we're pivoting towards previewing the 2023 season for all 32 NFL teams, which means a lot more Dolphins content will be coming out. So if you want to see that content, get notified of that content, ring that bell, subscribe to the channel. It's the easiest way to help us out and for you to get notified on the video. And Ryan, let's get into it here.
Let's do it.
Dolphins came into the 2023 offseason without a first-round pick, with a little bits of cap maneuverability that they could do. So, and not a lot of draft picks really to add a lot of players. I think after they are really 5, but then but then with the Jalen Ramsey edition, which was really just kind of like their key move of the offseason. They have added some other players, but they've mainly just been re-signing and trying to limit any damage from people moving on here. And it's essentially the same team from last year, plus Jalen Ramsey and rookies. So, and to be fair, I do think this Dolphins team was competitive last year. They just got hit hard with the injury bug. Like if Tua can stay healthy, I think there's optimism there that he can get into a rhythm. But can the offensive line, which they need to improve on, which did improve a little bit from the year prior, just need to help him protect him, essentially like that. So, but now another year of Tyreek Hill in the offense, the second year of Mike McDaniel, who's one of the better offensive minds in the league. It could be very scary, I think, on how explosive this offense could be.
Yeah, so maybe I'm a little biased as a Patriots fan here, but I think this offense is going to be really good for 8 weeks again. I just think you look at what they addressed in the offseason and then what they didn't, right? They're trying to build a Madden team. They're not trying to build an actual NFL team. That's the analogy I'm going to use, because last season they went out, they added Tyreek Hill. Then this season they add Jalen Ramsey, yet they haven't really addressed the trenches on either side of the ball. So let's go ahead and get into it, into their roster here. So obviously 2 big receivers up top, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. That's a really solid duo. And then they added Robbie Chosen Anderson as well. So he'll bring the head case to the locker room this season. But then outside of that, this offensive line is going to be, I think, exactly the same. Is that right?
Yeah, they did bring in Dan Feeney from the Jets. Probably more of a depth piece, but in general, though, yeah.
And then they brought in Isaiah Wynn from the Patriots like a couple days ago. But I'm how much those guys will contribute, I'm not sure. So they added some depth there, but off the top, not a whole lot of improvement on this offensive line. And to me, I think that's what really got Tua hurt so much last year, was this offensive line not being able to protect him having to scramble and then getting hit like that. And so that to me is a major concern. Tua does look to have bulked up a little bit over the offseason. But yeah, and then to me, we talked about this in our draft recap video, not addressing this offensive line until round 7, I think was a clear miss, especially when we look at it. To my opinion, Devon Achane is pretty similar to Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. I understand Devon Achane might be a little bit more explosive and possibly a better pass catcher, but you really needed to invest in this offensive line, and that they chose to draft Cam Smith, the corner, and then Devon Achane as well.
Well, I'll push back a little bit on, and I agree with the sentiment that it would have been nice to for them to address the offensive line sooner and get better talent in there. However, though, I think Devon Achane, like Raheem Mostert's 31, and then
I know Jeff Wilson's not young either.
Yeah, but I think Devon Achane, I think he adds a level because he can also run decently well in between the tackles. Also, he fits this offensive system very well, and that I think so. I do like that pick, and just considering the situation that the Dolphins were in with just 4 picks, very spread out. If there's one, I mean, maybe you can make an argument for not drafting Cam Smith, but at the same time, though, Jalen Ramsey's 29. Xavier Howard is also 29 or 28. They're both getting up there in age, and Cam Smith is one of the better corners in the class. And so I think it was just a pure best player available mode. And yes, could they have gone offensive line? But I also think, too, if it's just 4 picks, it's like, let's go get a player we know that can be good in our system. And then we'll deal with the offensive line stuff later.
And I'm not arguing the skill level of the player, because I think that is actually where both of these players were expected to go. I just think last year you got your quarterback literally concussed so much that he was contemplating retiring from football.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you didn't do anything to try and protect him. So that's like you did. You drafted a 7th round lineman. And so like that for me is a bit of it is a big concern, and I think could derail this team again.
Yeah.
So, but let's move on now to the defense. And we kind of already mentioned their 2 big personnel additions, and that's Cam Smith and then Jalen Ramsey. I think David Long came over from Tennessee this year as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that's it.
Not too many on the defensive side that weren't re-signings. David Long, as you said, came over, and I'm actually trying to figure. Linebacker there, but a lot of re-signings like Duke Riley and Justin Bethel, Nick Needman, and then Andrew Van Ginkel.
Andrew Van Ginkel.
Nailed it. I can't pronounce any names, even the Dutch ones. So, but I think that if there was a consistent strength, I would honestly say was their front 7 of this Dolphins team. They could really get after, like being led by Jalen Phillips. And Bradley Chubb, correct. There was maybe a little bit of drop off because I know Xavier Howard was dealing with some injuries in the secondary, so maybe a little bit of drop off there. But they also run a super uber aggressive like defensive front, and so I'm very curious now with Vic Fangio coming in as a defensive coordinator, how that's going to change, because I like that aggressiveness, but then sometimes they get burned on it. So then you combine that, if Howard can be healthy all year, if Ramsey can be healthy all year, it's actually funny you mentioned Madden. Like this is like an all Madden defense right here. Jalen Phillips, Christian Wilkins, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard. It's like they have a really good defense here. It's just can they just piece it all together? And it's something similar, I would say, kind of as what we were talking about the Jets. It's like, can the defense maintain their dominance? And actually, the Dolphins have an ability to improve just a little bit. Yeah. But then can the offense just be consistent enough to where teams that don't have to get complacent against their defense, where they can play safe against this defense, where they have to go use force to try and go and score on this defense, and that's what the defense wants you. That's what this Dolphins defense wants you to do. Is that's where they get you, because they're uber aggressive and they take their opportunities.
That's what Vic Fangio created. He is probably the father, like considered the father of this shell defense, and like with how explosive this offense is, that's really scary for other teams, because it's like you have to throw into this defense. Right. And so it's going to be really interesting to see. I think they're going to get creative with their rush packages. And I think the back end of this defense looks really good. So let's get into what a successful season would look like for the Miami Dolphins. And for me, so they made the playoffs last year. They kind of squeaked in as a late wild card, and they would have been actually probably in the lead to win the division, barring Tua's injuries, but they ended up barely sneaking in. And to me, I think a successful season for them is they can keep Tua healthy, they can win double-digit games, right? And then they can really make a push and be competitive to win the division, and then also be competitive to win a playoff game as well. And they were competitive to win a playoff game last year, but that was in Buffalo. And I don't want to take anything away from that win. It was a division opponent they'd already seen twice and played tough twice, right? So, they need to be making that next step. Tyreek Hill has already said he's not going to be here for much longer, and I just think they need to be taking that next step.
Well, and that's what I agree with you is they made it into the playoffs when like really struggling with injuries. They were able to find a way. Tua didn't even play. Shoot, Teddy Bridgewater didn't even play in the playoff game. It's Skylar Thompson, and they almost won that game. And so if they can stay healthy, if they can learn from their mistakes, now they understand this Mike McDaniel's offense with a year under its belt, and then understanding that lingo. I think Tua, some things, to be fair to the offensive line, I think Tua also was holding onto the ball on some of those injuries maybe a little bit too long. And not that like that's saying like he caused his injuries. It's not what I'm saying. But it is, I think, learning from that, getting the ball out quicker, because that's what this offense is built on, is they want this offense to run and like you and everybody just starts sprinting in different directions, and then Tua just like calmly like, okay, I want to throw it to this side, and the defense chases them, and then the next play is the other side. Throw with more anticipation and throw with and then have that get the ball out of his hands very quickly, because with a weaker offensive line, that's kind of what these teams need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think it's going to be a really interesting season for them. I could see, in all realisticness, I don't know if that's a word, but I could see them winning the division. I could also see them in fourth in the division. I just think it totally depends on if Tua can play like he did in the first 8 games, and if that offensive line can keep him upright. And then I think too, Jalen Ramsey, his last couple seasons in LA weren't the greatest, and especially last season was not very good, but nobody on LA was that good. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see. Does that change of scenery bring him back to what he was, or does he kind of continue that cycle of mediocrity? And so I think that's going to be really interesting to see as well. So but let's go ahead and wrap up the Dolphins offseason recap there. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below on what your favorite Dolphins addition was this offseason. Was it a draft pick? Was it a free agent signing? Let us know down below. And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.